Welcome to Life Stories Network, where real emotions meet unforgettable moments. Today's story is one that still makes my heart race when I think about it. It's about how I lost something I thought would always be mine, my childhood home, and how it all happened while I was away. Without a single warning, I had been living in another state for 6 months. Work had kept me busy, and honestly, I thought my family was fine. Mom would text now and then, just the usual small talk. She never mentioned anything strange, no hint that something was coming. That's why, when she called me out of the blue one Friday night and said, "We're selling your house," my whole world froze. At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed and said, "What do you mean, my house? That's the family home." She didn't laugh back. Her tone was calm, too calm. "It's done," she said. "Someone paid $1.25 million cash, no questions asked." I didn't know whether to shout or cry. The house wasn't just walls and rooms. It was my childhood. My father's laughter, my first birthday parties, the tree we planted when I was 10. I couldn't process that it was gone. I kept asking why. Why would she sell it without telling me? She sighed like she was tired of explaining. "You don't live here anymore," she said. It was time. We needed the money. That word, needed, stuck in my head. Needed for what? We weren't rich, but we weren't broke either. Something felt off. The next morning, I drove 9 hours straight back home. I didn't even pack a bag. I just threw on some clothes, grabbed my wallet, and left. The entire drive, my mind raced. What kind of person buys a home with that much cash and no inspection? It didn't make sense. When I arrived, the for sale sign was gone. A sleek black SUV sat in the driveway. Mom was standing by the door, her arms crossed, like she'd been waiting for me. She didn't look surprised to see me. Almost like she knew I'd come. Inside, the house didn't feel like home anymore. The furniture was half gone. Boxes lined the hallway. Even the old family photos had been taken down. I asked her again, "Why didn't you tell me?" She just said it was too complicated. Too complicated. That was her excuse for everything lately. I remembered how she'd been distant since Dad passed away 2 years ago. She'd stopped talking much, started avoiding questions. I thought it was grief, but now I wasn't sure. Then I saw the envelope on the table. It had my name on it. I opened it and found a check, my share, according to her. $50,000. I looked up at her, confused. "What is this?" She said, "You're part of the sale." I almost laughed. That house was worth so much more to me than money. I told her to tell me the truth. Her eyes darted away. "You wouldn't understand," she said softly. That made me even angrier. "Try me," I said. She hesitated, then whispered, "Your uncle needed help. He's in debt." Serious debt, I froze. My uncle. The one who had always been the family's problem. He'd borrowed money before, made bad deals, and disappeared when things got tough. "You sold the house to pay his debt?" I asked. She nodded. I couldn't believe it. My father had built that house from the ground up. He used to say, "This home will always belong to you." And now my mom had sold it to cover someone else's mistakes. It felt like betrayal. I walked out of the house and sat in the car. My hands were shaking. I wanted to hate her, but I couldn't. She was still my mom. I just didn't understand how she could do it without even talking to me. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Don't blame her. She did what she had to." My heart pounded. "Who was this?" I replied, "Who are you?" No answer. I showed Mom the message. Her face went pale. That reaction told me everything. She knew who it was. "Is it him?" I asked. She didn't deny it. She said, "He promised to pay it back. He said he'd take care of us." I felt sick. "You believed him?" She nodded. "He said a buyer was ready to pay in cash. He arranged everything." I thought he was helping. That's when it clicked. My uncle had probably set the whole deal up. Someone paid in cash. No inspection, no questions. It screamed shady. I told her, "You might have just been scammed." She looked stunned. "No, he wouldn't do that." But deep down, I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew I might be right. That night, I stayed in a cheap motel nearby. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that house, our house, being emptied out by strangers. I decided I couldn't just let it go. I had to find out who the buyer really was. The next morning, I went to the real estate office listed on the old sign. The agent wasn't there, but her assistant recognized the address. She said, "Oh, that property sold fast." The buyer paid cash through a company called Golden Bay Holdings. I asked who owned it. She said they didn't disclose. It's private, of course. I thanked her and left, but I already had a hunch. I searched the name online and found nothing but shell companies, fake addresses, dead ends. The whole thing looked like a cover. When I told Mom, she broke down crying. He said it was safe, she kept repeating. He said we'd be okay. I realized she'd been tricked, not just by him, but by her own hope. She wanted to believe someone would save her from the debt and loneliness. I decided to track my uncle down. It took 3 days, but I finally found a lead. A friend told me he was staying in a small town near the border. I drove there, not knowing what I'd do if I saw him. When I found him, he was sitting outside a rundown diner, looking nervous. I walked up and said his name. He froze, then tried to smile. "Hey, kid," he said. "Heard you're mad about the house." Mad didn't even cover it. "You stole it," I said. He looked around like he didn't want to make a scene. "You don't understand," he said. "I had to make a deal." I asked him what kind of deal. He said, "It's complicated." That word again. I told him to stop lying. "Who bought it?" He sighed and said, "It's better if you don't know." That's when I realized he was scared too. Not of me, but of whoever he'd made the deal with. He leaned closer and said quietly, "They're not the kind of people you want to mess with." My stomach turned cold. "You sold our house to criminals?" I asked. He didn't answer. I drove back home that night feeling helpless. I couldn't tell if this was just about money anymore or something bigger. Mom had trusted the wrong person, and now we were caught in something dangerous. But I wasn't going to stop until I got answers. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying my uncle's words. They're not the kind of people you want to mess with. It sounded less like advice and more like a warning. I kept asking myself what kind of people buy a house with over $1 million in cash, no paperwork, no inspection, no questions. It wasn't a family. It wasn't an investor. It had to be something darker. The next morning, I went back to the neighborhood. I just needed to see the house again. When I pulled up, I saw 2 men outside. They were wearing suits, but not the business kind. The kind that made you feel uneasy. They were inspecting the front gate and talking in low voices. One of them looked at me for a second too long. I turned the car around and drove off, pretending I was lost. I parked 2 blocks away and just sat there, watching from a distance. A delivery truck came by. The men signed for something heavy, a metal container, and rolled it inside. My gut told me this wasn't a normal sale. This wasn't about real estate anymore. That house had become a front for something else. I called Mom right away. "Stay away from the house," I told her. She sounded confused and scared. "What's happening?" she asked. I didn't want to panic her, so I said, "I think your brother sold it to someone dangerous." She went quiet. Then she whispered, "He promised it was legal." Later that evening, I drove to her apartment. She looked smaller somehow, like the stress had crushed her. I told her what I'd seen and her hands started to shake. "Oh my God," she said. "What have we done?" I told her it wasn't her fault, but she didn't believe me. She said she'd been hearing strange noises at night, cars pulling up outside, people watching. I knew she wasn't imagining it. We decided to go to the police. I explained everything, but they didn't seem too concerned. One officer said, "If the sale was legal and the buyer paid cash, there's not much we can do." I showed him the company name, Golden Bay Holdings, and he frowned. "We've heard of them," he said. "Stay away from that property." That only made me more uneasy. Over the next few days, weird things started happening. My phone would ring once, then stop. A car followed me one night, same black SUV I saw at the house. I drove in circles for 20 minutes before it finally turned off. When I got home, I found an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a single note. "Drop it." I took it to Mom. She started crying again. "They're threatening you now," she said. I told her not to worry, but truthfully, I was terrified. Whoever these people were, they wanted to make sure no one looked too closely. Then one morning, Mom was gone. Her phone was off, her purse was gone, but her car was still in the garage. I tore through every contact, called every friend. No one had seen her. The last call on her phone was from a number I didn't recognize. I called that number myself. A man answered, calm and slow. "You should have listened," he said, and hung up. My blood went cold. I knew then that Mom hadn't just disappeared. Someone had taken her. I went straight to the police again. They filed a missing person report but said they needed evidence before launching an investigation. I showed them the note, the number, everything. Still, they treated me like I was overreacting. Days passed, no sign of Mom. I barely ate, barely slept. Every knock on the door made me jump. Then one night I got an email from an unknown address. No text, just an attachment, a photo. It was Mom sitting in a chair somewhere dark, looking terrified. My chest tightened. The message said, "The house stays quiet. She stays alive." I knew I couldn't go to the police anymore. Whoever these people were, they had eyes everywhere. I had to handle it myself. I started digging into Golden Bay Holdings again, this time deeper. After hours of searching, I found a link between the company and a local businessman known for laundering money through property deals. I printed everything and drove to the man's office. He wasn't expecting me. He smiled too easily when I mentioned the house. "Ah, yes," he said. "Beautiful property." Very private. "What about it?" I told him my mother was missing and I knew his company was involved. His smile vanished. "Careful," he said quietly. "You don't know what you're walking into." That night, my uncle called. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. His voice was shaky. "They know you're asking questions," he said. "You need to stop." I shouted at him. "Where is she?" He said, "I don't know, but they're watching me too." Then he hung up. The next day, I went back to the house one last time. I parked far down the street and waited until it got dark. Around midnight, the SUV left. 2 men came out, got in, and drove away. I slipped through the side gate and crept toward the back. Inside, the lights were off. The air smelled like metal and chemicals. I followed the faint hum coming from the basement. What I saw made my stomach twist. Boxes stacked high, filled with cash, weapons, and documents with different names. It wasn't just shady, it was criminal. Then I heard footsteps behind me. "You shouldn't be here," a voice said. I turned and saw one of the men from earlier, holding a gun. My throat went dry. I raised my hands and said, "I just want my mother." He didn't shoot. He just looked at me, then said, "Leave town tonight. Forget this house. Forget everything." I asked again, "Where is she?" He said, "Alive for now. But not if you keep pushing." I backed out slowly and ran to my car. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely see straight. I didn't stop driving until I reached another city hours away. For the next few days, I stayed with a friend. I couldn't go home. I couldn't call anyone. But I kept thinking, if they hadn't killed her yet, maybe I could still get her back. I reached out to a private investigator, someone who didn't ask too many questions. He agreed to help for a price I couldn't afford but didn't care about. After a week, he called. "I found her," he said. "She's safe, but not free." He sent me a location, a storage facility outside town. I drove there that night, heart racing. I didn't know what I'd find. When I arrived, the investigator was waiting with 2 police officers. "We called it in," he said. "We have proof now." They opened one of the storage units and there she was, Mom. Tired, pale, but alive. I ran to her and she cried in my arms. The officers arrested 2 men nearby, part of the same group. They found fake IDs, stolen documents, and keys to several bought houses. Turns out Golden Bay Holdings wasn't a real company at all. It was a front for a crime network moving money through property deals. Mom told me later that my uncle had no idea how deep it went. He thought he was just borrowing money to clear his debts. When he couldn't pay back, they forced him to hand over our house. They used it to hide their operations, and when I started asking questions, they took her to silence me. It took months for the investigation to end. The group was exposed. The police linked them to at least 12 other illegal property deals. My uncle was charged too for helping them unknowingly. He's still in prison. As for the house, it was gone for good. The government seized it, but it would never be home again. Mom moved in with me after that. We started over, small apartment, quiet life. Sometimes we drive past the old street and she goes silent. I think we both learned something hard that year. Trust is fragile, and sometimes the people you love most can break it without meaning to. But we survived. And that's what matters. Months passed after the arrests, but the shadows of what happened never really left. Even when life looked normal again, there was a heaviness in every quiet moment. Mom stopped smiling like before. I'd catch her staring at nothing, lost in thought. When I asked what she was thinking, she'd just say, "I keep hearing the sound of the front door closing that last day." We were safe, but safety didn't feel the same anymore. The house had been our anchor. Without it, we drifted for a while, trying to find balance. I got a new job closer to home this time. Mom started volunteering at a local shelter, something to fill her days. But underneath, I could tell she carried guilt that no apology could fix. One night over dinner, she said quietly, "I know you'll never forgive me." I put my fork down. "That's not true," I said. "You made a mistake. You trusted the wrong person. But you're still my mom." She smiled faintly, eyes glassy. "You sound like your father." That was the first time she'd mentioned Dad in a long time. After he died, she built a wall around her pain. Selling the house, I realized, had been her way of running from it. The house was full of memories she couldn't bear to face anymore. Maybe part of her wanted it gone, even before my uncle showed up. A few weeks later, we got a letter from the district attorney's office. The case against Golden Bay Holdings had gone to court. They wanted us to testify about the sale and what happened afterward. Mom didn't want to. She said, "I can't go through that again." I told her she didn't have to. But deep down, I knew we needed to. Not for revenge, but for closure. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and full of faces that looked detached. When I saw the man who'd arranged the fake company, I felt that old anger rising again. He looked calm, smug even, like it was all just business to him. Mom took the stand first. Her voice shook at the start, but she found strength as she spoke. She told them how she trusted her brother, how the sale was done in secret, how she realized too late what was happening. I could see the jurors lean in. Her pain was real and they felt it. When it was my turn, I told them everything. The cash offer, the threats, the night I found her. I left nothing out. By the time I finished, the courtroom was silent. The defense lawyer tried to twist it, saying my uncle had acted alone, but the evidence spoke for itself. A month later, the verdict came in. Guilty on all counts: fraud, kidnapping, money laundering, and conspiracy. Some of them got 20 years or more. My uncle got 5 for cooperating, which hurt, but I knew he was already broken by guilt. When it was all over, the DA told me something that stuck with me. "You'd be surprised how many families lose everything because of one bad signature." That night, I sat with Mom on the balcony. She looked tired, but lighter somehow. "We can breathe again," she said. I nodded. "Yeah, we can. After that, things started to shift. I saved up for a new home, not big, just enough." When I showed Mom the place, she hesitated before stepping in. "Smells like fresh paint," she said, smiling for the first time in weeks. We didn't talk about the old house anymore. We didn't need to. This one was a symbol of healing, not loss. But even as we built new routines, there were reminders. Every time I saw a for sale sign, my chest tightened. Every time an unknown number called, I hesitated before answering. The fear had rooted itself deep. It would take time to fade. A year later, on the anniversary of the sale, I drove past the old neighborhood. The house was gone. Literally gone. Torn down, the lot fenced off. A new foundation was being poured. It felt strange, like watching a ghost disappear. I parked for a minute, got out, and stood there. The wind carried the smell of dust and concrete. Mom didn't want to come with me that day. She said she preferred to remember it as it was. I understood. Some things aren't meant to be revisited. As I stood there, I realized something. That house was never really the heart of our family. We were. And we were still here. A few weeks later, I got a call from my uncle's lawyer. He wanted to talk before his sentencing. I didn't know if I wanted to see him, but curiosity won. When I walked into the visiting room, he looked older, thinner, and worn down. "I didn't mean for any of it to happen," he said quietly. "They promised me it was temporary. I thought I was saving us." I wanted to yell, but I didn't. "You saved no one," I said. He nodded slowly. "I know. I just didn't want to lose everything." I looked at him and realized he'd already lost more than money could ever replace. I told him, "Mom forgives you." "You should forgive yourself," he smiled faintly. "You're a better man than I was." That was the last time I saw him. Life went on. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened around the edges. We learned to live with it, to let it shape us instead of destroy us. Mom and I talked more now. Honest talks. The kind we avoided before. We built trust again, one conversation at a time. Sometimes I'd catch her watching old home videos of Dad, the ones in the garden or by the front porch. She'd smile through tears, whispering, "He'd be proud of you." Maybe he would be. I like to think so. Years later, I told this story online. Not for sympathy, but as a warning. Never sign away what you don't understand. Never trust a deal that feels too easy. And never assume family can't be manipulated too. The video reached thousands of people. Some wrote saying they'd been through the same. Others said it made them rethink who they trust. Mom watched it once and said, "Maybe something good came out of all this after all." I nodded. Yeah, maybe it did. And for the first time in a long while, we both smiled without the weight of what we'd lost. Because in the end, the house wasn't the story. The story was how we found our way back to each other. That was the real home all along.